It all begins with a scream, not a song of welcome, not the sacred cry of arrival, but something more ancient, more raw, the scream of a soul being torn from silence. You weren't asked, you were pulled into breath, into flesh, into a world already spinning long before you arrived. We're told that birth is a miracle, a beginning, a sacred invitation into life. But what if that story is incomplete? What if your first breath was not the start of your freedom, but the moment you were exiled from something infinite, something whole? In ancient spiritual texts, birth is not always celebrated. In the Upanishads, it's the moment consciousness forgets itself. In Buddhism, it marks the beginning of suffering. In Taoist thought, it's the fall from the uncarved block into form. Even modern psychology has begun to explore birth as a kind of trauma, an unspeakable dislocation from unity into separation. And yet, we're expected to be grateful, to smile through the weight, to call this exile life, and pretend it was freely chosen. This video is not a denial of existence, but an inquiry into its roots. It's an invitation to look at the unspoken tension so many of us carry, that quiet, persistent sense that something about all this feels off, that perhaps the pain you felt all along wasn't a flaw in your experience, but a clue about the nature of the experience itself. Could it be that you didn't choose to be here? And if so, what are you actually choosing now? We'll explore how traditions across time have tried to answer this question, not to offer a doctrine, not to preach despair, but to open a deeper kind of seeing. Because maybe the path to peace doesn't begin with gratitude. Maybe it begins with honesty. This is beyond reality. And if you've ever felt like a stranger in your own life, you're not alone. Subscribe if you're ready to ask the questions most people are afraid to face. Let's begin. They call it a beginning, but something in you knows. It didn't feel that way. No one remembers the moment they were born. And yet, somehow, we carry its echo. It's like a subtle unease that we feel through life, a sense that we were dropped into a life out of nowhere, and were handed a name, a story, and a body. All this before we even had the chance to say yes. They tell us birth is a miracle, that existence is a gift. And that's true in a lot of ways, but why does being alive so often feel like being exiled from something we can't remember? There's a question that haunts certain minds, a quiet, unspoken tension that makes even joy feel suspicious. It whispers, "I never asked to be here." And beneath that, something even deeper. "I don't know how to be here." This is not depression. It is not nihilism. It is a metaphysical bruise, an invisible grief, the kind that doesn't come from something going wrong, but from being born into a world where wrongness is the starting point. You were born into light, but it was too bright to see. Born into breath, but only after drowning in fluid. Born into arms that trembled to hold you, as your body shivered in the cold air of separation. We celebrate that moment. We film it, frame it, call it a miracle. But few dare to name what else it is. A rupture. This is not metaphor, is not exaggeration. That's a real event, biological, psychological, and perhaps spiritual. Somewhere deep in the architecture of human memory, there's a trace, a silent imprint from before the beginning, of being held in total unity, where there was no time, no hunger, no name, just rhythm, warmth, the muted lullaby of a mother's heartbeat. We floated there, suspended in amniotic grace, not knowing what we were, only that we were safe. And then, something changes. A pressure, a tightening, a squeeze. The walls that once held us with love begin to contract. The warmth turns to force. The silence fractures. And then, blinding light, air that burns. A scream, not of joy, but of protest. The sound of a soul torn from stillness. Stanislav Grof, a pioneer of transpersonal psychology, once called this the first trauma, a template for all future suffering. He He described birth as a passage through escalating levels of distress, culminating in a kind of archetypal death and rebirth. According to Groff, these early imprints shape our lifelong relationship to control, fear, identity, even death. They live in the nervous system, imprinted as mood, an unspoken tension we mistake for personality, an inherited panic we carry in the quietest parts of ourselves. And modern science is beginning to comprehend that better. Studies show that birth trauma, especially when intense or surgical, can alter how a person's nervous system regulates stress for years to come. Babies born into fear often grow into adults who never quite feel safe. The body remembers, even when the mind forgets. But perhaps this rupture isn't just physical. In Buddhist teaching, dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of life, begins with birth. It is the first link in the chain of becoming. To be born is to enter the realm of pain, aging, decay, and death. This was not a punishment. It was just inevitable. The Upanishads whisper something similar, that before birth, the self was whole, unmoving, undivided, and birth is the moment we forget, the moment we fall under the spell of Maya, the great illusion of separateness. We believe we are a body, a mind, a story, and in doing so, we are cast out of the garden of our original awareness. It's not that life becomes painful, it's that pain becomes possible. To name this is an act of recognition, a way to finally explain what so many feel but have never been able to say, that something has always felt off, not because they're broken, but because they remember, dimly, silently, what it felt like before the break. There is no blame here, not toward parents, not toward nature, not toward God. Only the possibility that our first breath was not the beginning of life, but the end of a wholeness we didn't know we had. And maybe the quiet longing that lives in your chest isn't for success, or safety, or love, but for reunion, not with someone, with something you lost the moment you entered this world. Not everyone will feel this, but if you do, you're not imagining it, you're remembering. Before the name, there was presence. Before the cry, there was stillness. Before the face in the mirror, there was no mirror, only the wide, nameless field of being. Birth marks the beginning of separation. It gives us bodies, and with them, boundaries, lines drawn in flesh and bones, in language, in thought. And so begins the quiet fall, a movement from formlessness into form, a passage into the condition of separation. In Taoist thought, there is the idea of pu, the uncarved block, a symbol of original simplicity, untouched, undivided. But once carved, once labeled and shaped, its wholeness vanishes. Form is born, difference appears, and with it, conflict, preference, striving, identity. To be born, then, is to be carved, to be etched with a name, a gender, a race, a family, a role. And we forget the block was ever whole. We don't choose the script, but slowly we begin to identify with it. I am this body. I am this voice. I am this past. And the deeper we sink into the shape we've been given, the more distant the memory of what we were before. In Gnostic cosmology, this fall is dramatized as the creation of a false world, fashioned by a blind god, the demiurge, who mistakes its illusion for reality. Souls are trapped in flesh. Spirit is buried in matter. The true light forgets itself, believing in the dream of the constructed world. This is not theology. It is a map of experience. Because when you look closely, you begin to notice that your thoughts are not truly yours, that your goals were installed before you could speak, that the very concept of you is a container filled by others. And yet, we fight for this identity. We suffer for it. We defend it, decorate it, mourn it, and fear its end, because we believe it's real. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer called this the will, a blind, ceaseless force behind all existence. This force is not conscious or compassionate. just a restless impulse to become something, anything. The ego is its mask, desire its language, existence its echo. To fall into identity is to become a servant of that will, not in chains, but in belief. The belief that you are this skin, this story, this striving. But there's a strange mercy hidden in this recognition, because if your identity is a dream, you don't have to fix it. You don't have to purify it. You can simply wake up from it, not by erasing the name, but by remembering that you were never just the name. Somewhere beneath the noise of becoming is the quiet of being, and if you listen closely, you might hear it, like an ancient song echoing beneath the mask you were taught to wear. The fall into identity wasn't your fault, but remembering what you are beyond it, that's a choice no one can make for you. You were told you have free will, that your life is a series of choices, that you are the one steering the ship, deciding where to go, what to want, who to become. But pause, look closer. Did you choose the language that forms your thoughts? Did you choose the fears that shape your behavior? Did you choose the hunger, the ache, the need to be someone? From the moment of birth, desire begins. The mouth seeks the breast, the hands reach, the eyes search. A chain reaction set in motion long before you existed. And like a program written in code you didn't author, the body keeps running, reaching, fearing, wanting. Somewhere, it starts to feel like agency, like your career was a decision, like your relationships were a choice, like your goals came from you. But beneath that narrative is a current pulling everything forward, a biological inertia, a karmic cycle, a machine designed to want and to suffer in the wanting. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this loop in stark clarity, how the moment after death, a being, confused and overwhelmed, grasps toward light or shadow, pulled by unresolved desires, and in that grasping, another life is chosen, not freely, reflexively, and so the wheel turns again. David Benatar, a philosopher of antinatalism, once asked, if we did not choose to be born, and life contains unavoidable harm, what moral justification can there be for creating it? If suffering is baked into the structure of existence, is the continuation of life always good? It's a question that stirs discomfort, because we want to believe in our participation. We want to feel that we're choosing this, that our desires are sacred, that our pleasures redeem the pain. But what if desire is not a signal of freedom, but the proof of the trap? In Buddhist thought, it's tanha, craving, that keeps samsara spinning. Not just desire for pleasure, but desire for being, desire for non-being, desire to be anything other than what is. And so long as that spark lives in us, the hunger to become, to attain, to fix, we are reborn into identities, into reactions, over and over. You may think you're choosing your next move, but often it's the will choosing through you, the echo of the program, the residue of separation. But here's the quiet power hidden inside this bleak terrain. If you can see the illusion of choice, you're already beyond it. You're not immune to it. You're not awakened. You're just aware now. And in awareness, the machinery begins to slow. Because the moment you stop feeding the program, something else begins to stir. Something not born of fear, not made of want. Something that doesn't need to choose, because it never forgot what it is. Most people imagine freedom as an event, a breakthrough, an escape, something dramatic, something visible. But real freedom is quieter than that. It doesn't come with a light or thunder. It comes when the mind finally stops asking to be someone. The mystics knew this. They called it dying before death. Ramana Maharshi described it with unsettling simplicity. He lay down as a teenager, convinced he was going to die, and watched, in stillness, as the self dissolved. Not the body, not the thoughts, but the one who believed they were his. What rose in its place was not a better version of him. It was something unmoved, unborn, already free. Others have found similar exits, Simone Weil spoke of affliction as the weight of existence pressing down until the ego breaks, not as punishment, as purification, the stripping away of illusion, identity, and personal will. U.G. Krishnamurti went further still. He called the search itself a disease, said there was no path, no awakening, no soul to save. And yet, behind those words lived a kind of fierce peace, the peace of a man who had nothing left to want. All of them, in different ways, pointed to the same crack in the cycle, the realization that suffering doesn't come from pain, but from identification with the one who resists it. If birth was the beginning of illusion, then liberation is not a second birth. It's the end of rebirth altogether. Not physical death, not ascension, just the quiet ending of becoming. The Buddha called it nirvana, the extinction not of the body, but of craving, of the heat that drives the program. What remains is not a better self, but no self, just presence, just stillness. In Vedanta, this is moksha, freedom from the wheel, not by reaching higher, but by stepping off entirely, by seeing through the idea that there was ever anyone on it. This is not an escape. It's not a spiritual bypass. It's the deepest kind of responsibility, to stop creating the self that suffers. The cycle doesn't stop because you break it. It stops because you no longer believe in its motion. Imagine waking up tomorrow and no longer needing to be the character you've played, no longer needing to fix the story, redeem the past, or earn your place here. You'd still move, still eat, still speak, but the weight would be gone because the one who carried it, the one who was born into the scream, is no longer running the show. That's the quiet exit, not a death, not a victory, just a return to what you were before the name, before the mirror, before the world taught you how to forget. Maybe life isn't a question you were meant to answer. Maybe it's a sentence you woke up inside, unfinished, unchosen, and yet somehow yours to complete. From the outside, you may seem unchanged. You'll still rise in the morning, still speak your name, still walk through the dream the world insists is real. But something in you will know that the exile is over, not because you found a way out, but because you stopped believing you were ever truly trapped. The scream at birth wasn't your voice. It was the sound of forgetting, of being severed from the silence that held you, the wholeness you didn't know you were. And now you remember without remembering. Freedom isn't something you reach. It's what returns when you stop clinging to the one who reaches. This doesn't mean you'll never suffer again. The body will ache, the mind will wander, the world will keep spinning. But beneath it, there will be no one left to fracture. Only presence, only the hum of what's always been. Birth may have been the beginning of separation, but peace begins when you no longer feed the illusion of becoming. And in that stillness, you are already home. So if something in this spoke to you, subscribe to our channel. And when you're ready to go deeper, watch one of the 2 videos on your screen now. Thanks for watching.